So I just watched the recent Punisher special titled One Less Kill, which is the recent addition to the Punisher, I guess you could call franchise in the MCU. And it was supposed to be the lead up or guess palette cleanser towards Spider-Man Brand New Day, since John Burton's character will likely get a bigger role as his first theatrical appearance. But sadly, this didn't hit close to home as much as the original Netflix series did or his Daredevil appearances, both the Netflix and Born Again ones. This rather felt like a rehearsal of this character, or an introduction for those who had no idea who even is the Punisher or Frank Castle. I would like to kick off my review by saying that I am one of the biggest fans when it comes to the Punisher, or so I say, but really I didn't buy a single comic of this character, mainly because John Burton's portrayal of him was so good along with his acting that I felt like that no way in hell the comic version of the Punisher could elevate on that. And while this might be true, character-wise, I feel like he definitely got better stories in the comics than another, "Oh no, my family got killed, I'm so sad." It's understandable that he has a trauma from that, and it's also understandable that this is the motivation of his actions, killing people without hesitation rather than sending them to jail, because he will know once they get out they will kill again. But this type of story where he mourned his children and wife gotten old by now, I feel like. One of the reviewers, 3C Films, mentioned a good point that not even Batman goes around and breaks down every 2 seconds crying while saying, "Oh no, my parents!" In fact, he didn't even hallucinate them, not even once, if I recall correctly. So by doing another rehearsal of this, I felt like Marvel had no idea nor clue what to do with this character. So without further ado, let me dive into this special and tell you what I liked and didn't like about this. Starting out with the writing, since I already mentioned how the core story and the reason this special goes from A to B is pretty much flawed from the get-go, we follow a deadbeat Frank Castle struggling with PTSD after he supposedly killed everyone who were tied to his family's murder. But this wasn't the only bad writing in this. Left and right we see a type of anarchy unfolding in New York. People casually killing innocents just because without any explanation. In fact, one of the first scenes is a guy kicking a homeless person in the face, stealing his dog, then throw the dog in front of a moving truck, just to spite him and then move away. Guess John Wick taught people nothing, huh? And then we see burning cars, people attacking police cars, gunning down people for minor things, etc. One of the scenes that you will see is how one or at most 2 police cars being pulled to the side, and I thought, for this kind of anarchy you need an entire squad and you just send 1 or 2 police officers to armed lunatics? Just what even is this MCU? Where are the superheroes when you need them? If this is really what New York is in the world of Marvel, it makes the Punisher actually being the good guy, which shouldn't be the case for an anti-hero. The other writing and main plot point was the introduction of the long-awaited Punisher villain, Magnucci, who could easily be the potential villain once Punisher gets a born-again-like treatment with a quote-unquote Season 3 story. But honestly, that's again a double-edged sword, since we will be once back to square one with Frank doing the killing just to avenge his family, and to be frank, pun intended, Magnucci's character and introduction to the MCU was probably the worst character introduction you have ever saw. Like, as Frank casually walks, Ma just calls out to him in her little wheelchair, a black dude with crossed arms beside her, and no one else. For someone who is one of Frank Castle's most important villains, she does not seem scary at all. Frank could easily gun her down and the dude near her in quick succession, even when he debates whether to go after her or save a family at the end. He could have done both by quickly gunning her down and then go to save the family at the same time. Not to mention Magnucci's cringe one-liners like, "I'm the one who doing the punishing now," and trying to sound intimidating. A villain should be someone that the viewer wants to see dead as soon as she is on the screen, but she wouldn't even worth a bullet, as the way she got introduced was flawed from the get-go. In my opinion, even the casting was shit for her, and I would have preferred to see Ma being portrayed by Lisa Emery, who plays the Dama in The Walking Dead Dead City. In that series, she's one of the best villains the entire TVD had, and she can even be worse than the Governor in the future seasons, so in my mind, she would have been an amazing actress for the job to play Ma in the special, or in the entire MCU from this point. My other biggest concern was the fight scenes. We are talking about the Punisher, so if the fight scenes are bad, then pretty much you have failed to deliver on what a special with him should be. There was barely enough violence, so when the blood should have been spilling left and right, they cut away. Each throat slash was cut out. And there were no fight scenes that made me go like Russo did in season 1 of The Punisher, where I murmured the same words, "Damn, Frankie, I always love to see you work." Because this is what the fight scene should have been, when you know you should look away, but you can't. The perfect example for what this fight scene should have looked like was the coffee bar scene, where Frank grabs a screwdriver or something similar, looks the guy dead in the eye, and just stabs him, constantly over and over again. We see as the guy is trying to die, but Frank just keeps stabbing him over and over again. And to me, that is what this entire special should have been. We all remember the gym scene from season 2 where he grabbed a dumbbell and used it as a weapon to reshape a guy's skull, or the scene right after where in quick succession he shot down 6 people with 5 bullets. While the fight scenes were good enough, it felt like any anti-hero could have done it, and for Punisher special, good enough isn't good. I wouldn't even want to mention how did Frank survive any of that, since we all know what plot armor is, but the fact that Frank fell down on a bus or on the AC unit that showed him have a deformed AI CGI face and survived everything with like a bad leg at most is kind of making you think that this is very unserious. The whole special felt like some YouTubers hired John Burtnell to make a fan-made YouTube movie about the Punisher, and I don't say this to hate on John's acting because he carried the movie or special, and he did a 110% job to make this awful script work, but this special only exists for the sake of being a Punisher comeback, but it should have been the Punisher comeback as I expected it in the first place. I also don't know why did Disney or Marvel made the claim that you should watch the first 2 seasons and everything Daredevil related before heading into this special, because if you watch the first half of like season 1 you are already set to watch this 50-minute special from the get-go. It also didn't tie to Brand New Day in any way besides like the suit, which placement was also pretty corny, and it is clear that Marvel only shown this to show people that look at him, he is wearing the iconic school, just look at him. Speaking of school, the title drop was also pretty funny, how it just happened, both beginning and the end. But just so I not only hate on this special, I want to finally mention everything that was good about this, which is pretty few, but there are some. I kind of like the contrast that Frank had in his mind to save a family instead of pursuing revenge. That was a much needed character development, and that was by far the only worthwhile thing about this special story-wise. I also like the return of the iconic "no no no no" meme, and how they did a sort of new version of that. I'm pretty sure we will see plenty of gifs about it soon. And lastly, I think the soundtrack placement was very good, and I loved how it mirrored everything that Frank was currently feeling, doing, or feel like doing. But that's about it. Overall, I would give this a 6 out of 10, which really is a 5 out of 10, but because John Burtnell carried this with his acting and occasional caveman roarings, I bumped it up to a 6. If your favorite Marvel character is the Punisher too, or at least he is top 5, I would recommend you to watch this. If not, then you shouldn't really bother, as you will only going to see a 50-minute special with 40 minutes of hallucination and 20 minutes of actual action and story, which this special should have been more focused on. So overall, this special didn't even add anything new to the Punisher side of things, outside of a very weak Magnucci character drop. So, thank you guys for watching. What did you think about this special? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Write it down in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.